The ancient pottery shard crumbled between Maya Thompson's fingers like dried leaves. She cursed under her breath and carefully placed the fragments in a preservation container. 3 months of digging through the ruins of Kepler Station's archaeological site, and they still had more questions than answers about the vanished civilization. Maya brushed dirt from her knees and stood up, stretching her back. Around her, the excavation buzzed with activity. The tall, crystalline Vorthak researcher Tern hummed in harmonic frequencies as she analyzed mineral samples. Her transparent body caught the alien sun's light and threw rainbow patterns across the dig site. Meanwhile, Click, one of the insectoid Quillan scientists, used her 4 arms to carefully map the layout of what appeared to be an ancient temple complex. The research station housed almost 300 beings from a dozen different species, all working together to unlock the secrets of the planet's mysterious former inhabitants. Maya had been here longer than most, drawn by the unique architectural patterns that seemed to blend organic and technological elements in ways no known civilization had achieved. The morning had started like any other. Maya was examining pottery, fragments while her colleagues worked on their respective specialties. The Vorthak were natural geologists, their crystalline structure allowing them to sense mineral compositions through touch. The Quillan excelled at detailed mapping and analysis, their compound eyes seeing patterns that other species missed. The research was slow but steady. Then the sky changed. Maya looked up from her work to see massive shadows passing overhead. Ships, bigger than anything she had ever seen, moved across the sun like slow-moving storm clouds. Their hulls were dark metal, covered in weapon arrays and scanner dishes. The peaceful morning sounds of the dig site died away as everyone stared upward. Tern's harmonic humming stopped abruptly. Click's antennae twitched with nervous energy. Maya felt ice form in her stomach as more ships appeared, forming a perfect blockade around the planet. The communication system crackled to life across the station. A voice spoke in the common trade language, cold and mechanical. Inhabitants of the research facility, you are now under the authority of the Dominion Empire. Remain in place for processing. Maya had heard of the Dominion. Everyone had. They were the nightmare that peaceful species whispered about in the dark. A militaristic empire that swept through the galaxy, enslaving useful species and eliminating those they deemed worthless. Their technology was centuries ahead of most civilizations, and their bioscanners could detect every living being on a planet from orbit. The voice continued. Our scanning systems are now active. Any attempt to hide or escape will result in immediate termination. You will be evaluated for utility and processed accordingly. Around the dig site, panic began to spread. Some researchers ran toward the main station buildings. Others stood frozen in terror. Maya watched as Tern's crystalline body began to pulse with stress patterns, while Click's wings buzzed anxiously. Maya forced herself to think clearly. She was an archaeologist, trained to observe and analyze. The Dominion ships were already deploying smaller craft toward the planet's surface. She could see the scanner arrays on their hulls, dishes and sensors that would map every life form below. She pulled out her portable research scanner and activated it, watching as it immediately picked up the biosignatures of everyone around her. Tern showed up as a complex crystalline energy pattern. Click appeared as a rapid pulse organic signature. Maya herself registered as the typical human baseline, steady and warm. The first Dominion shuttles landed near the main research complex. Armored figures emerged, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They moved with military precision, establishing a perimeter and setting up additional scanning equipment. Maya grabbed Tern's arm, feeling the cool, smooth texture of living crystal. We need to get back to the station, she said. Find out what's happening. The 3 researchers made their way toward the main complex, joining streams of other beings all moving in the same direction. The variety of species that made the research station so vibrant now seemed like a cruel joke. Each different form of life would be evaluated by the Dominion's cold standards. At the main building, they found chaos. The station commander, a elderly, Quellan named Bronze, was trying to maintain order while receiving reports from across the facility. His 6 eyes were wide with fear as he coordinated evacuation procedures that everyone knew were pointless. "The scanners have locked onto all of us," Bronze announced to the gathered crowd. "There is nowhere to hide on this planet. The Dominion. Technology can track individual biosignatures through solid rock." Maya watched through the main viewing window as more Dominion troops established positions around the station. Their equipment was impressive and terrifying. Mobile scanner units moved like mechanical spiders, sending data back to the orbiting fleet. She could see the scanning beams, faint blue lights that swept across the landscape in methodical patterns. A new voice came over the communication system, this one clearly organic rather than mechanical. "Research facility inhabitants. I am Commander Rask of the 3rd Dominion Fleet. Your facility contains specimens of 12 different species. You will be sorted according to Imperial classifications." The voice paused, and Maya could hear the sound of data being processed. "Vorthak specimens will be retained for mineral processing applications. Quillan specimens show potential for detailed manufacturing work. Human specimens demonstrate acceptable physical parameters for manual labor." Maya felt sick. They were being discussed like livestock at a market. Commander Rask continued. "Species deemed non-essential will be eliminated to conserve resources. Processing will begin within the solar cycle. Do not attempt to resist or hide. Our bioscanners maintain constant surveillance of all life forms on the planet's surface." Around Maya, her colleagues and friends began to cry, pray, or simply stare in shocked silence. The Vorthak hummed in frequencies so low they made the building vibrate. The Quillan clicked their mandibles in distress patterns. Maya looked at her, portable scanner again, watching the dots that represented everyone she cared about. Each signature was clear and distinct, impossible to hide from the Dominion's technology. But as she stared at the display, an idea began to form in her mind. She thought about the ruins they had been excavating, the mysterious civilization that had vanished without explanation, the strange ash deposits they found throughout the temple complex, the organic compounds mixed with volcanic minerals that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. Maya quietly slipped away from the main group and headed toward her research quarters. If she was right about what she had discovered in those ancient ruins, she might have found something the Dominion had never encountered before, something that could make a person invisible to the most advanced scanning technology in the galaxy. Maya's research quarters felt like a tomb as she barricaded the door behind her. The sounds of Dominion troops moving through the station echoed through the walls, accompanied by the terrified voices of researchers being rounded up for processing. She forced herself to block out the noise and focus on the problem at hand. Her shelves were lined with samples from months of excavation work. Pottery fragments, mineral samples, organic compounds, and detailed photographs of the temple complex covered every surface. Maya had always been methodical in her research, but now that careful documentation might be the key to survival. She pulled up her field notes on her computer screen and began scanning through weeks of observations. The vanished civilization had left behind many mysteries, but one pattern kept appearing throughout their ruins. They had used a specific mixture of volcanic ash and organic compounds in almost every structure, coating walls and floors with the substance. Maya had initially thought it might be decorative or religious in nature. The ash came from the planets, many volcanic regions, and contained unusual mineral properties. Mixed with plant-based compounds found only in the ruins, it created a dark, powdery substance that the ancient people seemed to value highly. But what if it served a more practical purpose? Maya grabbed several sample containers and began mixing the volcanic ash with the organic compounds according to the ratios she had documented. The resulting mixture was almost black, with a fine texture that clung to everything it touched. She had tested it before for various archaeological properties, but never for the specific purpose she now had in mind. She activated her portable bioscanner and pointed it at herself. The display showed her signature clearly, the steady rhythm of human life signs that marked her as a target for Dominion processing. Maya took a deep breath and began coating her hands and arms with the ancient mixture. The ash felt cold and gritty against her skin, but it spread easily and adhered well. She worked quickly, covering her exposed skin with the dark substance. When she finished with her arms, she pointed the scanner at herself again. The results made her heart race. Her biosignature was noticeably weaker, as if something was interfering with the scanner's ability to detect her life signs. It was not perfect invisibility, but it was significant interference. Maya realized she needed to test this more thoroughly. She mixed more of the compound and began applying it to her entire body, working the ash into her hair and covering her face until she looked like a shadow given human form. The mixture had no smell that her human senses could detect, but it felt like wearing a second skin made of ancient earth. When she scanned herself again, her biosignature was barely registering. The scanner showed only faint traces of human life signs, so weak they could be mistaken for background interference or equipment malfunction. Through her barricaded door, Maya could hear Dominion troops moving through the research wing. Their scanner equipment beeped and hummed as they confirmed the location of every researcher in the building. Soon they would reach her quarters, and she would discover if her desperate theory actually worked. Maya quickly gathered more of the volcanic ash and organic compounds, stuffing them into her field pack. She also grabbed her research notes, her portable scanner, and a few tools that might prove useful. If this ancient camouflage technique actually worked, she would need supplies to maintain it and possibly teach it to others. The footsteps outside were getting closer. Maya could hear the mechanical voices of Dominion troops calling out room numbers as they systematically searched each quarters. She positioned herself in the corner furthest from the door and activated her scanner one more time. Her biosignature was so faint it barely registered on the display. To the scanner, she appeared to be little more than background noise. The door to her quarters burst open with a crash of splintering wood. 2 Dominion soldiers entered, their armor gleaming with integrated scanner displays. Their weapons were raised and ready, and their helmet sensors swept the room with mechanical precision. Maya held her breath as the soldiers moved through her quarters, their scanners probing every corner. She watched their helmet displays from across the room, seeing them register her furniture, her equipment, and her research samples. But they showed no indication of detecting her presence. One soldier spoke into his communication device. "Room 247 clear. No life signs detected." The other soldier paused near Maya's desk, examining her research materials. "Primitive archaeological specimens. No strategic value." He swept his scanner across the room one more time, the beam passing directly over Maya's position. Nothing. The soldiers moved on to the next room, leaving Maya alone in the darkness. She waited until their footsteps faded before allowing herself to breathe normally again. The volcanic ash camouflage had actually worked. She was invisible to the most advanced scanning technology in the galaxy, but being invisible was only the beginning. Through her window, Maya could see Dominion shuttles landing near the main research complex. Hundreds of her colleagues were being herded into containment fields, their biosignatures clearly visible to the enemy scanners. The gentle Vorthak researchers hummed in distress as they were separated from other species. The insectoid Quillen clicked their mandibles in fear and confusion. Maya watched as Tern was forced into a group of other Vorthak specimens. Her crystalline body pulsed with stress patterns that Maya had learned to recognize over months of working together. Click was placed with the other Quillen, her 4 arms, bound with energy restraints that prevented her from using her natural digging abilities. The sight of her friends being treated like inventory in a warehouse filled Maya with rage, but she forced herself to think strategically. She was one person with a temporary advantage against an entire fleet. If she was going to help anyone, She needed to understand the enemy better. Maya began moving through the abandoned research station, staying in shadows and avoiding the main corridors. The volcanic ash camouflage was holding up well, keeping her invisible to the scanner sweeps that the Dominion troops performed regularly. But she had to be careful about visual detection, since the camouflage could not make her invisible to direct observation. She made her way to the station's main laboratory, where the Dominion had established what appeared to be a command post. Through the windows, she could see officers studying displays that showed the biosignatures of every captured researcher. The scanning technology was even more sophisticated than she had realized, capable of analyzing individual genetic markers and physical capabilities. Maya watched as the Dominion officers discussed the fate of various species. Some researchers were marked for immediate transport to slave processing centers. Others were scheduled for elimination. The cold, methodical way they discussed the lives of her friends and colleagues made Maya's hands clench into fists. But she also learned something important. The Dominion's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had become completely dependent on their scanning technology. Their security protocols, their tactical planning, even their basic situational awareness relied on bioscanners to tell them where every living being was located. They had never encountered an enemy they could not see. Maya retreated to a maintenance tunnel beneath the station and began planning her next move. She had discovered something that could potentially change everything, but she needed to be smart about how to use it. The volcanic ash mixture could make her invisible to their scanners, but she would need more than invisibility to rescue her friends and colleagues. She needed to turn the Dominion's own technology against them. The maintenance tunnels beneath the research station had become Maya's invisible highway. Covered in the ancient volcanic ash mixture, she moved through the narrow passages like a ghost that the Dominion scanners could never detect. The compound needed to be reapplied every few hours to maintain its effectiveness, but Maya had gathered enough materials to last for days. 3 days had passed since the invasion began, and Maya had learned the rhythms of the occupying force. The Dominion troops relied completely on their scanners to tell them where everyone was located. They performed regular sweeps of the facility, but their search patterns followed the scanner data. Since Maya did not appear on their sensors, they never looked for her in the right places. She had started small, testing the limits of her invisibility. Maya discovered she could walk past Dominion guards in dimly lit corridors without being noticed, as long as she moved carefully and avoided direct visual contact. The soldiers trusted their technology so completely that they rarely used their own eyes to search for threats. Her first act of sabotage was simple but effective. Maya accessed the station's water recycling system and introduced a harmless but foul-smelling bacterial culture from her archaeological samples. Within hours, the entire Dominion command post reeked like rotten eggs. The soldiers complained constantly, but their scanners showed no biological threats, so they assumed it was a mechanical malfunction. Maya's confidence grew with each successful infiltration. She began targeting the Dominion communication arrays, introducing subtle interference patterns that caused their radio signals to break up at crucial moments. When patrol teams called for backup, their messages were garbled. When officers tried to coordinate prisoner transport schedules, the data arrived corrupted. But Maya's most ambitious project was her systematic assault on the Dominion's scanner network itself. She had studied their equipment during her invisible reconnaissance missions and discovered that the scanners were more sophisticated than she had initially realized. They could be programmed to ignore certain biological signatures, filter out background interference, and even create false readings if someone knew how to manipulate their programming. Maya had spent years working with complex archaeological dating equipment and geological survey tools. The principles were similar enough that she could understand the basic functions of the Dominion scanners. More importantly, she had learned that the devices were all networked together, sharing data through a central command system. If she could access that central system, she might be able to turn their own technology against them. The main laboratory had become the nerve center of the Dominion occupation. Officers monitored displays showing the biosignatures of every prisoner, tracked the progress of processing operations, and coordinated with the fleet in orbit. Maya had been watching the facility for days, learning the guard schedules and identifying the security weaknesses. The Dominion's overconfidence in their technology had made them careless about basic security measures. They posted guards at the entrances, but only monitored for biosignatures. They locked the computer terminals, but assumed no one could approach them undetected. They had created a fortress that was impregnable to any enemy they could see, but completely vulnerable to one they could not. Maya waited for the shift change at midnight, when the night crew replaced the day staff. During the 10-minute transition period, the laboratory was briefly understaffed as officers briefed their replacements. Maya slipped through a ventilation grate and dropped silently into the main computer center. The central command terminal glowed with displays showing the real-time status of every scanner on the planet. Maya could see her fellow researchers marked as red dots on the facility map, their biosignatures clearly identified and tracked. The system also showed patrol routes, guard positions, and prisoner transport schedules. Maya connected her portable research computer to the command terminal using interface cables she had salvaged from the archaeological equipment. Her archaeological analysis software was not designed for military applications, but Maya had modified it to recognize and manipulate the data patterns used by the Dominion scanners. She began her work carefully, introducing small errors into the scanner calibration files. A human biosignature became slightly weaker. A Vorthak energy pattern shifted frequency. A Quillen life sign moved a few meters from its actual position. The changes were too small to trigger security alerts, but they would accumulate over time. Maya also planted a more aggressive virus in the communication protocols. This program would gradually corrupt the data links between different scanner stations, causing them to report conflicting information about the same targets. Within a few days, the entire scanner network would be unreliable. But her most elegant addition was a false signature generator. Maya programmed the system to occasionally report biosignatures in locations where no one actually existed. The fake signatures would appear briefly and then vanish, like phantom contacts that the scanners could not quite track. As Maya worked, she could hear Dominion officers in the next room discussing prisoner processing schedules. They were planning to execute the researchers they deemed non-essential within the next few days, keeping only those species that showed potential value as slaves or workers. The cold efficiency of their planning made Maya's hands shake with rage as she worked to undermine their systems. Maya finished her sabotage and retreated through the ventilation system before the next security sweep. She had been inside the command center for less than 20 minutes, but she had planted the seeds of chaos throughout their entire scanner network. The effects began to show within hours. Patrol teams reported biosignatures in empty rooms, then found nothing when they investigated. Scanner stations gave conflicting readings about prisoner locations, causing confusion during routine head counts. Communication links between different facilities began experiencing intermittent failures. Maya watched from her hiding places as Dominion officers grew increasingly frustrated with their equipment. They ran diagnostic tests that showed no problems. With the hardware, since Maya's virus only affected the data processing software, they recalibrated their scanners repeatedly, but the mysterious phantom contacts continued to appear. By the fourth day of occupation, the Dominion's technological advantage was beginning to erode. Their scanners still worked, but the officers no longer trusted them completely. They began posting additional guards and conducting visual inspections to verify the scanner data. Maya realized she had created an opportunity that would not last long. The Dominion would eventually discover and correct the problems she had introduced into their systems. But for now, their scanner network was unreliable enough to create gaps in their surveillance. She began reaching out to the other survivors, who might still be hiding on the planet. Using the station's emergency communication system, Maya sent coded messages to anyone who might be listening. She could not reveal her location or methods without compromising her invisibility. but she could share information about Dominion patrol patterns and security weaknesses. To her amazement, she received responses. Small groups of researchers had escaped the initial roundup and were hiding in caves, abandoned mining facilities, and remote research stations. They had been afraid to move or communicate, knowing that the Dominion scanners would detect them immediately. But Maya's sabotage had created windows of opportunity when the scanner coverage was incomplete or unreliable. She began coordinating with these survivor groups, providing them with safe movement times and routes that avoided Dominion patrols. Maya also discovered that some prisoners had been moved to temporary holding areas outside the main research complex. These facilities were less heavily guarded, since the Dominion assumed their scanners made escape impossible. With her insider knowledge of the security systems, Maya began planning rescue operations. The invisible archaeologist was no longer fighting alone. She had become the unseen coordinator of a growing resistance movement, using her unique advantage to level the playing field against a technologically superior enemy. But Maya knew that her greatest challenges lay ahead. The Dominion would not tolerate continued interference with their operations. Soon, they would begin taking more aggressive measures to eliminate whatever was causing their equipment problems. Maya needed to move fast if she wanted to save her friends before the enemy adapted to her tactics. The abandoned mining facility, 15 kilometers from the research station, had become an unlikely fortress for the growing resistance. Maya crouched in the shadows of the main tunnel entrance, watching as a small group of escaped prisoners worked, desperately to apply the volcanic ash mixture to their bodies. The technique that made her invisible to Dominion scanners was not working as well for the other species, but it was still providing some protection. Turn, the crystalline Vorthak researcher, struggled with the ash coating. Her transparent body structure meant the mixture could not adhere properly to her surface, but she had discovered that the volcanic compounds interfered with scanner readings when mixed with her natural mineral composition. The result was not invisibility, but a significant reduction in her biosignature strength. Click, the insectoid Quillan scientist, had better success with the camouflage technique. Her exoskeleton held the ash mixture well, and her naturally segmented body allowed her to apply it thoroughly to every surface. When coated properly, she appeared to the scanners as nothing more than background geological noise. Maya had been working with these escaped prisoners for 5 days, teaching them her camouflage methods and coordinating their activities through coded communications. The group now included representatives from 6 different species, each contributing their unique abilities to the resistance effort. The Vorthak could create interference patterns in electronic systems by modulating their natural crystalline resonance. They had learned to disrupt Dominion scanner arrays by standing near the equipment and vibrating at specific frequencies that caused calibration errors. The Quillan used their natural digging abilities to create hidden tunnel networks throughout the planet's rocky terrain. Their compound eyes could see scanner beam patterns that other species missed, allowing them to identify safe routes through the Dominion surveillance grid. Even species that seemed to have no obvious combat advantages found ways to contribute. The elderly Quellan administrator Bronze had escaped during one of Maya's diversionary attacks, and his administrative knowledge proved invaluable for understanding Dominion operational procedures and security protocols. But Maya remained the heart of the operation, the only being who could move completely undetected through Dominion-controlled areas. She had become the Resistance's eyes and ears, gathering intelligence and coordinating operations that the enemy never saw coming. Their first major success came when Maya infiltrated a prisoner transport convoy. The Dominion was moving a group of researchers to a processing center in the northern continent, including several of Maya's closest colleagues. The convoy route passed through a narrow canyon where the rocky terrain created natural interference with scanner signals. Maya used her inside knowledge of the Dominion communication systems to send false orders that delayed the convoy's departure by several hours. When the transport vehicles finally entered the canyon, they found the road blocked by a carefully orchestrated rock slide that Click and her fellow Quillen had engineered. In the confusion that followed, resistance fighters emerged from hidden positions throughout the canyon. The Dominion guards were caught completely off guard, their scanners showing no indication of the ambush until it was already underway. The ash-camouflaged rescue team freed 37 prisoners and vanished back into the rocky terrain before reinforcements could arrive. But the rescue operation also revealed the limitations of Maya's techniques. The volcanic ash camouflage required constant reapplication and worked best on human physiology. Other species could achieve partial concealment, but none of them could match Maya's complete invisibility to scanner detection. More problematically, the Dominion was beginning to adapt to the resistance tactics. After the convoy ambush, they increased their security protocols and began conducting visual inspections in addition to scanner sweeps. They also started using motion detectors and thermal imaging equipment that could potentially detect camouflaged targets. Maya realized that the resistance needed to evolve their methods if they wanted to continue operating successfully. During a secret meeting in the mining facility's deepest tunnels, she outlined her analysis of the changing tactical situation to the other resistance leaders. "The Dominion is starting to compensate for their scanner problems," Maya explained, her voice echoing in the rocky chamber. "They're using backup detection methods and increasing their patrol frequency. We need to be smarter about how we operate." Turn's crystalline body pulsed with thoughtful patterns as she considered the problem. "My people can create more sophisticated interference effects if we work together in groups," she suggested. Multiple Vorthak operating in coordination could disrupt entire scanner networks simultaneously. Click's antennae twitched with excitement as she added her own ideas. "The tunnel networks we have been building could be expanded to cover the entire continent. We could move large groups of people without ever appearing on the surface where the scanners can detect us." Maya nodded, but she knew they needed something more dramatic to turn the tide of the conflict. The Dominion still held hundreds of prisoners, and their processing schedule was accelerating. Many of her friends and colleagues would be executed or enslaved within days if the resistance could not mount a more effective rescue operation. That night, Maya made her most dangerous infiltration yet. She penetrated the main Dominion command ship in orbit, using a supply shuttle that she had sabotaged to create false scanner readings. The ash camouflage had been modified with additional compounds that she hoped would work in the different environment of the spacecraft. The ship's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Maya moved carefully through the passages, avoiding the crew members who walked with the confident stride of people who believed they controlled everything around them. She eventually found what she was looking for: the ship's main computer core, which controlled the entire planetary scanner network. This was not just the local command system she had sabotaged before, but the master control center for all Dominion operations in the star system. Maya's hands shook as she connected her modified archaeological equipment to the alien computer systems. This was far more complex than anything she had attempted before, and failure would likely mean death or capture. But the potential rewards were enormous. She began uploading a virus that she had been developing for weeks, a sophisticated program designed to turn the Dominion scanner network into a weapon against its own operators. Instead of detecting resistance fighters, the scanners would identify Dominion personnel as enemy targets. Instead of tracking prisoner locations, they would show false readings that would lead guards into carefully prepared ambushes. The virus was designed to spread slowly through the network, making small changes that would not be detected until the entire system was compromised. It would take several days to fully activate, but once it did, the Dominion's technological advantage would become a devastating liability. Maya completed the upload and escaped from the command ship just as the next shift change began. Her heart pounded as she rode the supply shuttle back to the planet's surface. knowing that she had just planted a digital bomb that would either liberate her friends or get them all killed. Back at the mining facility, Maya shared her plan with the other resistance leaders. The virus would create chaos throughout the Dominion scanner network, but they would need to be ready to exploit the confusion when it activated. They spent the next 3 days preparing for the largest rescue operation in the Resistance's brief history. Every available fighter was equipped with the best camouflage techniques they could manage. Tunnel networks were extended to reach the main prisoner holding areas. Weapons and equipment were gathered from abandoned Dominion facilities that had been evacuated due to scanner malfunctions. When Maya's virus finally activated, the Dominion's orderly occupation of the planet collapsed into confusion within hours. Scanner stations reported that their own troops were enemy infiltrators. Command centers received false data showing massive prisoner escapes that had never occurred. Communication systems were flooded with contradictory reports and impossible scanner readings. In the chaos that followed, the Resistance struck simultaneously at targets across the planet. Prisoners were freed from holding facilities that had been left unguarded because the scanners showed no signs of approaching rescue teams. Dominion equipment was sabotaged by fighters who approached undetected because their own technology identified them as friendly forces. Maya watched from her concealed position as hundreds of her colleagues emerged from the Dominion facilities, blinking in the alien sunlight like people awakening from a nightmare. The Resistance had grown from one invisible archaeologist into a coordinated force that had turned the most advanced military technology in the galaxy into a weapon against itself. But Maya knew this was only the beginning of a larger battle. The Dominion fleet still controlled the orbital space around the planet, and they would not tolerate this level of interference with their operations indefinitely. Soon they would attempt to regain control through more direct and violent methods. The ghost in the machine had awakened a sleeping giant, and now both sides would discover what happened when unstoppable technology met human determination. The emergency beacon on Maya's portable scanner flashed urgent red patterns as she crouched in the shadows of the Dominion Command Center. The intercepted communication she had decoded 20 minutes earlier still echoed in her mind like a death sentence. Commander Rask had issued the order that would end everything: execute all remaining prisoners at dawn and prepare for immediate departure from the planet. Maya checked her chronometer. 4 hours until sunrise. 4 hours to save the lives of everyone she cared about. The Resistance had grown beyond anything she could have imagined when she first covered herself in volcanic ash and vanished from the Dominion scanners. Hundreds of survivors now operated across the planet, using her camouflage techniques and tunnel networks to strike at the occupying forces. But their greatest success had also triggered the enemy's most desperate response. The Dominion fleet was hemorrhaging resources, trying to maintain control of a planet where their technology had turned against them. Maya's virus continued to corrupt their scanner networks, creating false readings and phantom contacts that sent patrols chasing shadows. The Resistance fighters moved through the surveillance grid like ghosts, appearing long enough to strike and then vanishing back into the rocky terrain. But Commander Rask had finally acknowledged what his subordinates were too proud to admit. The Dominion was losing control of the situation, and they were prepared to cut their losses in the most brutal way possible. Maya activated her communicator and sent coded messages to every Resistance cell across the planet. The message was simple and desperate. All units converge on the main detention facility for final rescue operation. This was not a request for volunteers, but a call for everyone who could fight to risk everything in one coordinated assault. The detention facility was a fortress built in the center of the research station's main complex. The Dominion had concentrated their remaining prisoners there, surrounding them with heavy weapons and multiple layers of scanner coverage. Maya had been studying the facility for days, looking for weaknesses in their security arrangements. She had found only one potential avenue of attack, and it required her to do something that would almost certainly result in her death. Maya made her way through the maintenance tunnels one final time, carrying equipment that she had been preparing for this moment since the Resistance began. Her pack contained enough modified volcanic ash to coat 50 people, prototype scanner jammers built from archaeological equipment, and a computer virus that would make her previous sabotage efforts look like pranks. But most importantly, she carried detailed schematics of the Dominion flagship's scanner array, information she had gathered during her infiltration of the command ship. If her desperate plan worked, those schematics would become the key to ending the occupation permanently. Maya emerged from the tunnels at the detention facility's outer perimeter, where resistance fighters had already begun gathering in the pre-dawn darkness. She could see Turn's crystalline form reflecting starlight from behind a pile of rubble, and Click's compound eyes glowing softly from within a crevice in the rocky ground. Dozens of other fighters waited in concealment, all of them covered in various versions of the ash camouflage that Maya had taught them. Bronze, the elderly Quellan administrator who had become their informal leader, approached Maya's position. His 6 eyes were wide with a mixture of hope and terror as he spoke in a low whisper. "The scanner readings show over 200 prisoners still inside the facility," Bronze reported. "But the Dominion has tripled their guard positions and activated all their backup detection systems. This is not going to be like our previous operations." Maya nodded grimly. She had known this moment would come eventually, when stealth and sabotage would not be enough to achieve their goals. The Resistance had learned to fight invisibly, but now they needed to win a battle that everyone could see. "I need to get to the main scanner array on the flagship," Maya explained, pointing toward the Dominion command ship visible in the sky above them. "If I can upload this virus directly to their primary systems, it will cascade through their entire fleet network." Bronze's antennae twitched with concern. "That ship is heavily defended. Even if you could reach it undetected, you would never escape alive." Maya had already accepted that reality. This mission was not about her survival, but about ensuring that the Resistance would continue after she was gone. The virus she carried would not just disrupt the local scanner network, but propagate to every Dominion ship in the fleet, making their technology unreliable across multiple star systems. "The ground assault begins in exactly 1 hour," Maya continued, checking her equipment one final time. "When you see the scanner array on the flagship go dark, that will be your signal to move. The facility's defenses will be blind for approximately 10 minutes while their backup systems attempt to compensate." Maya moved away from the group before Bronze could raise further objections. She had already said goodbye to her closest friends. Among the Resistance fighters, sharing final instructions and copies of her research notes. If anyone survived the coming battle, they would have everything they needed to continue using her camouflage techniques against the Dominion. The supply shuttle that Maya had used for her previous infiltration was parked at a maintenance dock near the research station. The Dominion crew believed it was one of their own vessels, since Maya's earlier sabotage had corrupted their identification systems. She slipped aboard during the chaos of the pre-dawn shift change, hiding in a cargo compartment filled with scanner equipment being transported to the flagship for repairs. As the shuttle lifted off toward the command ship, Maya could see the Resistance fighters moving into position around the detention facility. They looked like shadows flowing across the landscape, their ash camouflage making them nearly invisible even to her trained eyes. Turn and her fellow Vorthak had positioned themselves near the main scanner stations, ready to create interference, patterns that would disrupt the facility's detection grid. The shuttle docked with the flagship just as Maya's chronometer showed 30 minutes until the scheduled execution of the prisoners. She waited until the cargo was unloaded before emerging from her hiding spot, her body completely coated in the modified volcanic ash that had kept her invisible for so many weeks. The ship's corridors were busier than during her previous infiltration, with crew members rushing to prepare for departure. Maya moved carefully through the passages, avoiding the main transit areas where visual detection was more likely. Her destination was the central scanner array, the master control system that coordinated surveillance for the entire Dominion fleet. Maya reached the scanner control room just as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The ground assault had begun early, with Resistance fighters attacking multiple targets simultaneously to create maximum confusion. Through the ship's communication system, she could hear reports of scanner malfunctions and phantom contacts appearing across the planet. The scanner control room was defended by 2 guards, but they were focused on the displays showing the chaos unfolding below. Maya slipped past them and reached the main computer terminal, connecting her archaeological equipment to the alien systems for the final time. The virus she uploaded was not subtle like her previous efforts. This was a digital weapon designed to destroy rather than deceive, a program that would overload the scanner networks and cascade through every connected system in the Dominion fleet. Maya watched the upload progress as explosions from the planet's surface lit up the view screens around her. At 70% completion, one of the guards noticed an anomaly in his scanner readings. He turned toward Maya's position, his eyes widening as he saw the dark figure crouched at the computer terminal. For a moment, human and alien stared at each other in mutual shock. Maya drew the small energy weapon she had taken from a captured Dominion soldier weeks earlier. She had hoped never to use it, but desperation had stripped away her preference for non-violent solutions. The guard reached for his own weapon, but Maya fired first, the energy beam dropping him before he could. "Raise the alarm." The second guard spun toward the sound of weapons fire, his scanner showing no target where Maya stood. The volcanic ash camouflage was still protecting her from electronic detection, but her position was now obvious to direct observation. Maya fired again, silencing the second guard before he could call for reinforcements. The virus upload reached completion just as heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Maya had triggered security alerts throughout the ship, and Dominion troops were converging on her position. She activated the virus and began her escape, but knew that her invisibility advantage was now compromised. The virus spread through the flagship systems like wildfire, corrupting scanner data and communication protocols throughout the ship. Warning lights flashed as the computer networks began reporting impossible readings and conflicting information. Maya's program was designed to be self-replicating, spreading to every connected system in the Dominion fleet. As Maya fought her way through the ship's corridors, the effects of her sabotage became visible on the planet below. The detention facility's scanner grid went dark, leaving the guards blind to the resistance assault unfolding around them. Explosions bloomed across the research station as hidden fighters emerged from concealment to strike at targets that could no longer detect their approach. Maya reached the shuttle bay as Dominion security forces closed in behind her. The cargo shuttle she had arrived on was already preparing for departure, its crew unaware that their passenger manifest included an invisible saboteur. Maya slipped aboard just as the bay doors began to close, hiding among the equipment containers. As the shuttle launched toward the planet's surface, through the shuttle's viewports, Maya could see the results of the coordinated assault. The detention facility was surrounded by explosions and energy weapon fire as resistance fighters overwhelmed the blinded Dominion defenses. Scanner stations across the research complex sparked and smoked as the virus corrupted their programming beyond repair. But most dramatically, the Dominion fleet itself was beginning to show signs of system-wide failure. Ship after ship reported scanner malfunctions and communication breakdowns as Maya's virus propagated through their networks. The technological advantage that had made the Dominion invincible was collapsing from within. The shuttle landed at the research station just as the first groups of freed prisoners emerged from the detention facility. Maya watched through tears as turn and click led hundreds of researchers toward the safety of the tunnel networks that the resistance had carved through the planet's rocky terrain. Her friends were alive, and they were free. Maya slipped away from the landing pad as Dominion troops rushed to respond to emergencies across the facility. Her volcanic ash camouflage was wearing thin after hours of constant use, but she no longer needed to remain completely invisible. The scanner networks that had once made her the most wanted person on the planet were now too corrupted to track individual targets reliably. She made her way to the Resistance command post in the abandoned mining facility, where Bronze and the other leaders were coordinating the evacuation of rescued prisoners. The elderly Quellen's 6 eyes brightened with relief when he saw Maya, approaching through the tunnel entrance. "The virus worked beyond our most optimistic projections," Bronze reported with barely contained excitement. "Scanner failures are being reported throughout the Dominion fleet. 3 ships have already left orbit, claiming equipment malfunctions that prevent continued operations." Maya nodded wearily, her body exhausted from weeks of constant tension and the physical demands of her final mission. But she felt a deep satisfaction as she watched the steady stream of freed prisoners making their way to safety through the tunnel networks. Over the following days, the collapse of Dominion control accelerated dramatically. Maya's virus continued to spread through their fleet networks, making their scanner technology unreliable across multiple star systems. Other worlds that had been targeted for invasion found themselves dealing with confused and technologically crippled Dominion forces. The resistance techniques that Maya had developed spread just as quickly as her computer virus. Survivors who escaped the planet carried knowledge of the volcanic ash camouflage to other worlds, teaching new resistance movements how to become invisible to the Dominion's most powerful weapons. 6 months later, Maya stood in the rebuilt research station, watching as former prisoners returned to continue their archaeological work. The ancient ruins that had provided the key to defeating the Dominion were now being studied with renewed intensity as researchers sought to understand how the vanished civilization had developed such sophisticated camouflage techniques. Turn approached Maya's position, her crystalline body pulsing with the harmonious patterns that indicated contentment among her species. "The latest reports indicate that Dominion expansion has halted in 17 different sectors," she reported. "Resistance movements across the galaxy are using variations of your techniques to fight back against their invasion forces." Maya smiled as she looked out across the dig site where her desperate journey had begun. The simple act of covering herself in ancient ash had grown into a galactic revolution that was reshaping the balance of power among the stars. The Dominion was learning that the most advanced technology in the universe could be defeated by the oldest trick in the human survival manual. Sometimes the best way to fight the future was to remember the wisdom of the past. And sometimes the most powerful weapon against an enemy who could see everything was the ability to vanish completely from their sight.